that can be you can gain some squares from losing that pawn, but when you lose one of the hanging pawns, often your opponent is the one who gains a lot of squares. So it's always an interesting discussion there. Yeah, 25-55, no nationality or name. Interesting to see. Gonna go for an old favorite of mine here, the Benko Gambit, which I think has kind of faded away a little bit. It's not as popular as it was, and the way people usually play it is without taking on a6 there, and allowing a4 and then going queen a5 later on, followed by bishop takes a6. I think both ways of playing are okay, but when playing this opening, you got to be aware that what is usually going to be better. It's just a question of whether you can sort of complicate the game and get a playable position. Rook b1. This is the old main line for white, and I have to say my opponent is playing it quite correctly. Playing rook b1 and bishop d2 is the correct move order there, and it usually leads to some white advantage. Yeah, so here I can go knight g4, which is typical on knight e8, but knight a4 may happen then. It's been a long time since I played these lines, so I don't really know what to do. I think I played this move queen a3 though before, and sort of yeah, obviously I'm not going to repeat moves. That's one of the points that white sometimes has to make some kind of concessions in order to get out of that repetition. Yeah, we'll go knight c7 for the moment. I'm not worried about the pin to my queen. Now I'm a little bit more worried because of knight b5. Not that worried though. The question here though is how am I creating counterplay? And it's not obvious. Where is my counterplay in my mind? Okay, no, probably we won't. Okay, let's bite in the sour grass, as we say in Norwegian, and move the queen away. Probably queen a7 could happen next. I probably gotta play c4 at some point. The good thing about my position though is while I am a pawn down and there's no very obvious compensation for it, my structure is very solid. Like the only weak point in my structure is potentially the pawn on e7, while d5 could be a little bit weak for white. b3 could be a little bit weak. And if you move the pawn to e4, which is very logical, protecting the pawn on d5, then there could be some fairly weak squares behind it, especially d3, and the pawn on e4 could come under attack as well. So that is one of the points of playing this opening, that you do get some long-term structural compensation for the pawn you're down. So you shouldn't really panic if you cannot find immediate compensation. And most of all, you should not listen to the computer, because the computer will always tell you that white has a huge advantage, which could very well be true. But it also it's a little bit demoralizing, I think, when you're trying to play this opening. Bishop g5 is a bit surprising because I can now win a pawn with bishop takes c3, followed by bishop takes e2. Question is, do I want it? Then rook e1, knight takes d5, queen d2. My knight look a little bit exposed. Probably I don't want to do that. It's also a common theme here, whether actually taking on e7 is a threat. I believe it may not be. Bishop e7, I got rook e8, a5 deflecting the queen. I got queen takes a5, and the knight on c3 is hanging. If this bishop moves away to h4, then g5 would trap the bishop. So in the end, he decides that there's nothing in particular to be gained there. Okay, let me go queen b4. I assume bishop d2 is going to happen. Then I may go c4. It looks risky, but I may get away with it. If bc4, queen c4, let's just think about this for a sec. If bc4, queen c4, rook b7, bishop b7, I think I'm happy. Knight c5 is coming next. Don't think he can trap my queen with the e4 and bishop bf1 because I have queen b3 there later on. Knight b5 is interesting. Then cb3, rook b3, queen a4 seem to be doing well. Okay, I don't have time for this, obviously. And if knight b5, cb3, queen c7, I got queen a4. Knight c3 back, I take on c7, and then I take on e2. Some very complicated lines here. Queen c6 as well. Didn't think this was dangerous. Queen a4, knight c7 might be very good for white, but I don't immediately see what's wrong with queen c5 here. Now I see what's wrong. Now I do see what's wrong. There's rook c1, and I was thinking bishop takes b5, and I'm completely fine. But the rook on the rook on the square called b7 will be hanging then. That could mean that I'm in a world of trouble then after rook c1. Okay, so I think this means that I have to turn to plan B, which is to try and hustle him in one way or another, meaning either to flag him or to somehow trick him. And a Church of Rio, that's the name. Took some time for me to... Oh, that is so tricky. That is so nasty what he did here. Yeah, it's really nasty. Because you can take on b7 now. Okay, I still have hope though. It's not dead lost at all. Rook takes b3, I take on e2. I should have excellent drawing chances. Knight f3 though. Yeah, I'm not gonna accept a draw. Come on. Have you seen me play before? I don't accept draws in worse positions. Either I'm going to get flagged or I'm going to flag you. Okay, let's just exchange those, make some quick moves, and then it's going to be a flagorama. Flagorama. Sorry, dude. Those are the rules.